This week on Brian Ross Investigates, the race for the vaccine, what you need to know, when will it be approved, who will get it first, will it be safe, why the president claims he made it all possible.
I can say that our request for emergency use authorization for our COVID-19 vaccine is now in the FDA's hands.
We're joined by Dr. William Shaffner from Vanderbilt University and advisor to the FDA on the COVID-19 vaccine approval process. Plus, could it get any more embarrassing or outrageous? The president's legal team strikes out again and again in court.
This is not a fraud case.
I heard somebody else say something. Tell me why that's not hearsay. Come on now.
The once widely admired Rudolph Giuliani laughed out of court and in the court of public opinion.
At one point, Rudy's hair dye actually started dripping down his face. This is real. We didn't do this. Take a look at this.
We're frustrated with what we keep reading.
Will the president and his lawyers pay a price for their legal antics? We're joined by former Giuliani aide Ken Friedman and Law&Crime investigative reporter Adam Glassfeld. And this week's winners and losers in the media. The president's followers turn on Tucker Carlson and Fox News. See if you agree with the findings of the editors of Mediaite.
But she never sent us any evidence, despite a lot of requests, polite requests, not a page. When we kept pressing, she got angry and told us to stop contacting her.
From the Law&Crime Trial Network, this is Brian Ross Investigates. Good evening, and thank you for joining us, and welcome to our viewers on Facebook Live. I'm Brian Ross, joined as always tonight by my colleague Rhonda Schwartz. And Rhonda, we begin with the promising news of a potential COVID-19 vaccine, actually 3 of them, all coming, though, as we face perhaps the darkest days of this pandemic, with 1 American on average dying every minute from COVID-19, Rhonda.
That's right, Brian, and it's a terrible toll. And to get some perspective, when the pandemic was declared a national emergency last March, only less than 50 people had died. This has all happened since then, and with Thanksgiving and the holidays on the way, there's real concerns about what lies ahead.
But perhaps, Rhonda, much to be thankful for with the development of these vaccines. Here's how the people at Pfizer announced the good news from their company.
Our vaccine candidate has demonstrated efficacy of 95% against COVID-19, with no serious safety concerns observed to date. Based on current projections, we expect to produce globally up to 50 million doses in 2020 and up to 1.3 billion doses by the end of 2021.
We're joined now by Dr. William Shaffner of Vanderbilt University, a regular here on the program who's given us such great insight. Dr. Shaffner, as the FDA prepares to take a look at these vaccines, what are they really looking for? Is there anything that hold this up?
I don't think there'll be much to hold us up, Brian. They'll be looking at how well does this vaccine work? Does it work in all age groups studied? Children haven't been studied yet. That comes next. And they will also be paying a lot of attention to safety. Are there any serious adverse reactions associated with this vaccine? This vaccine does make your arm sore. It hurts. And it makes some people feel punked the next day. I mean, to the point of actually having to take a day off. So it's what we call reactogenic. But so far, as far as we know, no major safety issues. And that's very reassuring.
Have you been surprised at the reports of 90% plus efficacy for each of these 3 products?
I've been blown away. I've been very excited about that. We would have been delighted at 70% effectiveness, but over 90%, and now 3 vaccines studied in 3 separate large trials. They all reinforce each other. I think this effectiveness is very solid. The other thing is, as you said, we're in a long, dark tunnel, but these are 3 bright lights at the end of that tunnel. We still have a long way to go, but all of a sudden, we're getting optimistic.
Indeed. A question for you, Dr. Shaffner, from Rhonda Schwartz. Rhonda?
Dr. Shaffner, the FDA says it's going to start meeting on December 10th to do the final evaluations to get this underway. But there are reports that the UK is going to start administering this vaccine starting next week, December 1st. What's the difference there?
Well, that's there, we're here. They have a somewhat different schedule. Our FDA will look at this very carefully, and they have an external group of experts that will take these data apart and put them together. That's a transparent meeting. If you're interested, you can tune in. And then after they approve it, give it the emergency use authorization, it will go to the CDC's Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, and they'll approve it, I think, and then give us their prioritization scheme as to who should go first, second, and third. That's also a group of experts that will look very carefully at the data. I think we'll all be reassured, and healthcare workers will go first, and then the rest of us in due course will get in line.
Dr. Shaffner, the FDA group is said to be meeting December 10th. Why couldn't it be any sooner than that? What's the holdup?
Well, first of all, it's a large amount of material that comes in from the company. The agency itself has to review it. It then has to go to a committee, this external committee, and you want each of those external experts, they're tough, to really look at the data and have a chance to really understand it and ask questions of the manufacturer, and then they come together at this meeting. I think the timing is okay. You know, we've gone very fast, but we don't want this to be rushed. This is routine practice, very rigorous, and frankly, that's the way we all want it. I think we'll start vaccinating by the end of December.
That's great news. But doctor, how about for your holidays this Thanksgiving and the holidays at the end of the year? What are you going to do?
They will be holidays in spirit, but not very much in person. Our dining room table will be very small, just the immediate family. We're not getting everyone together. We're being very careful, sheltering at home, giving thanks, but not giving the virus.
Once again, Dr. William Shaffner, thank you so much. You've been with us ever since we began reporting on this 9 months ago. It's been a long 9 months, and it's great to see you say light at the end of the tunnel. Have a very good Thanksgiving.
Thanks. And the same to you, and the same to Rhonda. Thank you.
You bet. All right, coming up next, what even Trump's own supporters call a national embarrassment. A close-up look at the Trump legal team. You're watching Brian Ross Investigates on the Law and Crime Trial Network. It's being called pathetic, a national embarrassment. Even conservative radio talk show host Rush Limbaugh is critical of the Trump legal team led by Rudy Giuliani. After widespread public claims of widespread national fraud, the lawyers have gone to court and told judges that there is no fraud.
This is not a fraud case. We are not alleging fraud in this lawsuit. We're not alleging that anyone is stealing the election.
Well, let me ask you, are you arguing then that strict scrutiny should apply here?
No, the normal scrutiny should apply. If we had alleged fraud, yes, but this is not a fraud case.
Joining us now is Ken Friedman, a former press secretary for Rudolph Giuliani when he ran for mayor in New York City, and Adam Klasfeld, the senior investigative correspondent at Law and Crime News. And Adam, let me start with you. Thank you both for being here. What's the record so far of the Giuliani legal team on behalf of President Trump?
Well, so far they're losing the majority of their cases, but more than that, they are basically demolishing the talking points that they keep putting out there in the public sphere. Now, we have to remember they keep alleging when they're in front of the cameras, they talk about this massive fraud, that they go in front of a judge and they say, and this is a direct quote from Rudy Giuliani, "This is not a fraud case." Another Trump attorney, Corey Langhofer, used those exact words, and other Trump attorneys have used variations of those words.
So they undercut their own case. What evidence at all have they presented anything that comes close to their exaggerated claims?
Well, we can point to one stack of quote unquote evidence that they tried to introduce in Arizona. And it was a stack of affidavits that were filled out by electronic form letter. Now, these affidavits, some of them they admitted contained lies and, in their words, spam. And those were the ones that they could confirm were false affidavits under oath. They did not submit. The ones that they could not prove were false affidavits. They tried to run those by the judge, who said, well, you're just showing me things that you can't disprove. That doesn't make them reliable.
So Rudolph Giuliani and his team really being laughed out of court and laughed at in the court of public opinion. Ken Freeman, what happened to Rudy Giuliani? There was a time when he was so highly regarded, America's mayor, a top federal prosecutor.
He met and went to work for Donald Trump. That's what happened. You know, Donald Trump corrupts everyone around him, even somebody who was formerly incorruptible, we thought, like Rudy Giuliani. You know, the question that remains is why? Why is Rudy representing Donald Trump in this case? He's never practiced election law. He hasn't been in a courtroom in 30 years. Certainly there was somebody more qualified to handle this case. You know, is it because he trusts Rudy, or because, as Rudy said about a year ago, he's got insurance on Trump? And if he has insurance, what is that insurance? It must be pretty good insurance. I wish I had such good insurance, to tell you the truth.
Do you recognize this man from the man you once knew, with the hair dye coming down the side of his face and sweating and bumbling and mispronouncing things?
Yeah, see, I'm not sure that wasn't brain fluid that was leaking from his ear, to tell you the truth. No, of course not. I worked for a very smart, competent, ambitious, strong-willed, decisive, candidate for mayor. And we all achieved something historic that I've been proud of for many years. But every time Rudy opens his mouth, it diminishes my resume and the resume of so many of my colleagues. You know, he says he doesn't care about his legacy because he'll be dead, but I care about my legacy.
Yeah. And Adam Klasser, let me ask you, the latest news over the weekend was that one of the legal team members, Sidney Powell, has now been disavowed by the White House. Doesn't represent anybody. What happened there with Sidney Powell and her wild conspiracy allegations?
Well, what happened is a continuation of what we've been seeing with Trump's legal team, which is attrition. We have seen that the major law firms have pulled out. Porter Wright in Pennsylvania. And with Sidney Powell, we had that press conference where she spouted wild conspiracy theories, and it got to be too much for a legal team that has traded on wild conspiracy theories. Now, I should make clear, we don't know precisely what led to that remarkable statement where the Trump campaign is now claiming that someone who shared the stage with the rest of their legal team is not, in fact, associated with their legal team. But one can put it in context and say that the attorneys and law firms keep pulling out, and the conspiracy theories that she spouted on that stage have led to a lot widespread derision that just may not have looked good for Team Trump.
Not at all. In fact, one White House insider said that she's too crazy even for Donald Trump. Ken Freeman, is Rudy Giuliani going crazy here? What's he doing, really? What do you think?
Well,
is it a dash for relevance, his last shot?
Yes, I think there's a lot of desperation, that results in that flop sweat. He knows he's just flailing around and that they have no evidence. If they had evidence, they would produce it in court. Just to follow on what Adam said earlier, Rudy said it's not a fraud case. If it's not a fraud case, or these are not fraud cases, what are they? What are they? legally, I would put that to, an attorney on the representing him. If they're not arguing fraud, what are they arguing? They're arguing that Maduro and Chavez are behind it, and he's dead. And he's dead.
Can't even follow it now. And Adam, finally, how long can this drag out at this point? Can it go up till first of next month?
Well, I've heard one legal analyst or read legal analyst say that some of these lawsuits are tweets with filing fees. And so long as they don't give up the ghost, it's possible to drag something out. But in terms of actually accomplish what they set out to accomplish, I think we'll find out soon whether or not the Supreme Court will even listen to the case. They brought an appeal to the Third Circuit, and once that actually landed to an appellate court, they're not even fighting the case. They're fighting for a chance to amend their complaint. So what we're seeing is flailing and desperation as long as they want to drag this out.
Absolutely. Well, good reporting, Adam. Thank you so much for joining us. Adam Clansfield from the Law and Crime News, and Ken Freeman, former press secretary for Rudolph Giuliani and now a media consultant. Thank you both for being here today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Up next, this week's winners and losers in the media. See if you agree with the editors of Mediaite with what they have to say about Tucker Carlson and Fox News. You're watching Brian Ross Investigates on the Law and Crime Trial Network. Time now for this week's winners and losers in the media, as chosen by the editors of Mediaite. And we're joined by the editor-in-chief of Mediaite, Aidan McLaughlin. Mediaite, what's like the Law and Crime Trial Network, is all part of the Dan Abrams media empire. And Aidan, Tucker Carlson has often been one of your losers, but this week's he's a winner. Let's watch why.
So we invited Sidney Powell on the show. We would have given her the whole hour. We would have given her the entire week, actually, and listened quietly the whole time at rapt attention. That's a big story. But she never sent us any evidence, despite a lot of requests, polite requests, not a page. When we kept pressing, she got angry and told us to stop contacting her. When we checked with others around the Trump campaign, people in positions of authority, they told us Powell has never given them any evidence either, nor did she provide any today at the press conference.
There he is, Aidan, taking on Sidney Powell, a Trump lawyer at the time, no longer working for Trump, disavowed by the White House.
Yeah, that's right. So Tucker Carlson, as you note, has been loser in the loser side of the column for us frequently. He actually was last week when he pushed some of President Donald Trump's claims that dead voters had voted in the 2020 election. He had to issue a correction shortly afterwards because one of the voters turned out to be alive. He sort of redeemed himself a little bit last week because he had this segment about Sidney Powell, who was one of Trump's lawyers who was floating this pretty vast conspiracy theory about Venezuelan voting machines that were being used by communists and George Soros to steal the election from Donald Trump. It was pretty wacky stuff. And when Tucker Carlson reached out to Sidney Powell to ask that she provide some evidence or come on the show to discuss the theory, she actually got angry and apparently they had a little argument. And then he reported to his viewers that that's what happened, which is commendable because I think on Tucker Carlson's show, and particularly on Fox News Primetime, you don't really hear much skepticism about these wild theories that Team Trump is pushing. So for him to come out and say that Sidney Powell is simply not providing evidence of these claims was, commendable, and it was actually prescient because she got booted from the Trump legal team by Sunday of this week.
Has he paid a price in ratings, though, for taking on the Trump lawyer?
Well, it's funny, actually. He got beaten in the demo ratings on Friday night by Anderson Cooper, which, as you know, Brian, CNN beating out Fox News in primetime is a huge deal. So he may have suffered a little bit of a dip in the ratings, as Fox News is generally, just because a lot of their audience wants to hear them report that Donald Trump has actually won this election, which we know is false. I would caution that I think that's all very temporary. Fox News is the conservative network. It's going to be for a long time. I wouldn't call this sort of an exodus of viewership from the network so much as just, people whose candidate has lost are tuning out a little bit.
Now let's turn to this week's loser, Geraldo Rivera on Fox News. And let's watch the video how he earned his stripes, so to say.
I had an idea, when with the world so divided and everybody, telling him he's got to give up and time to leave and time to transition and all the rest of it. Why not name the vaccine the Trump? Make it like, have you gotten your Trump yet? No, it would be a nice gesture to him. And years from now, it would become just a kind of a generic name. Have you got your Trump yet? Oh, yeah, I got my Trump. I'm fine. I wish we could honor him in that way.
Even his co-panelists were giggling about that one, Hayden.
I think if you manage to make the Fox and Friends hosts giggle with your sycophancy, you've probably gone a step too far. So this was Geraldo's idea. Geraldo's idea. He's been a friend of the president for a long time. And his pitch here was that the only way to bring this country together after it's been torn apart by an election that the president is claiming that he won and it was stolen from him by Democrats is to name the vaccine after Trump. I think everyone's aware of how insane that is. And also the fact that we have to sort of coddle the ego of the president of the United States because he didn't win re-election by naming a vaccine after him for a pandemic that, he's arguably contributing to by just caring so little about the coronavirus and having sort of conflicting messaging on it is a little bit absurd. And that's pretty much why we named Geraldo the loser to that week.
And certainly was. And you wonder what he was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's the kind of thing that he's pushed before, Geraldo. He has this personal relationship with Trump that I think he finds hard to separate from a professional relationship or from just looking at Trump in sort of a journalistic fashion and saying, the president of the United States does not need to be rewarded for losing an election so that he goes quietly and sort of reunites the country.
All right. All right, and thank you very much, and thank all of you for watching. Have a safe and happy Thanksgiving. We'll see you next week.